Controversy continues to surround the Klamath River as state agencies are working on implementing new, stricter regulations on farmers and irrigators along the Klamath River and its tributaries, which include the Scott and Shasta rivers. Under the Klamath Basin Total Maximum Daily Load Agreement, ranchers will have to establish best management practices for water usage, as well as help develop buffer zones between farmland and the river. This can be done with the use of grasses, which will act as a filtration system for nutrients which can flow into the river in water runoffs, as well as helping to plant and keep trees developed along the way that will provide canopy shade to help lower the water temperature. Ranchers are claiming that this can be a difficult process because the grasses and trees cannot thrive in the same general area. Buffer zones and best management practices are only some of the ways that the Klamath Basin TMDL agreement could affect ranchers and timber workers along the rivers. The Klamath TMDL is described as an effort to restore fish habitats and improve water quality in the Klamath River and its tributaries. The North Coast Water Quality Control Board is overseeing the drafting of the agreement, which is a highly debated issue. The Siskiyou County Farm Bureau and other agricultural organizations feel the drafting of the agreement is being rushed, which has left questions unanswered, along with shaky scientific studies. If implemented, it will regulate the amount of input landowners are permitted to contribute into the rivers. These include silt, nutrients, and chemicals used in irrigation that could potentially flow into the river. Jeff Fowle, the second vice president of the Siskiyou County Farm Bureau, said recent environmental lawsuits have forced these state agencies to shift into high gear to get the TMDLs completed. Environmental groups are concerned that ag development along the waterways and an increase in chemicals and nutrients running off into the water have resulted in a decreased number of salmon making their way up the river to spawn. Yet farmers are saying that there is little historical proof of the changes in fish numbers and water temperatures the Water Quality Control Board is claiming. David LeLand, chief of the Watershed Protection Division of the Water Quality Control Board, admits that it is difficult to document differences in fish numbers and water temperatures over the span of several decades. But beyond little documented differences and the potential cost to private parties is the uncertainty surrounding the removal of the 4 dams along the Klamath River. If the dams were to be removed, it could potentially jeopardize the entire intention of the Klamath Basin TMDL. This is due to the silt and sediments behind the dams. Public comment period will be open for about another month and a half on the agreement, and the final adoption hearing will be held in late October. For some historical perspective on this issue, Daniel and I are joined by Roy Hall Jr., chairman of the Shasta Nation.
Well, thank you. And Roy, you probably have a better understanding of historical perspective of our river, fish here in our river, et cetera, than most. Why don't you share with us some of that historical perspective that you have?
Well, our tribe has been surviving here for the millennium, many, who knows for sure. So one of the most accurate things that we have is the team that came up and did the treaty signings, Reddick McGee. He had with him a fellow named George Gibbs, who was a very accomplished lawyer, and he came west, learned the language of the Indians. He came along and had a very accurate detail of the river, the fish, the conditions of the fish, the tribes. And back then, in 1851, he wrote that the river was tainted at that time, clear down there. I believe that was at the Trinity River in the Klamath. And as he came up the river with the expedition, the river got worse. The fish were rotting, and they had to camp upside streams to get away from that. And and that was in November, and those conditions existed clear up until that time, that year.
So the fish, actually, the smell of the fish was so rotten, they had to move their campsites away from the river. And this is in November of, what did you say,
1851.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. What have you seen, or what have your ancestors seen with fish in the river since then?
Well, that talks about the condition of the river, and it also says that there were a lot of fish.
Okay, Sarah?
So because of the sediment behind the dams and the toxins that are supposedly built up back there, what do you think that dam removal could do to the intentions of the TMDL as they're working to improve the quality of the water? Do you think that it could backpedal the whole agreement? What do you think that could potentially happen with that?
I think the sediment issue is huge. I don't even think they know the possibility of the damage that could be done.
Huh. And has your tribe taken any position on any of these issues?
Well, there's a lot of things that go along with that. Part of it is the Klamath restoration. When that, if that takes effect, it will take the dams out, then you'll have all the sediment, and there's a whole bunch of issues that we all know about. The tribe has concerns about, you know, it'll expose archaeological sites, burial sites, you know, and of course the sediment and the price tag.
Yeah. And considering dam removal and that issue, if my understanding is correct, the Shasta tribe occupies, its Aboriginal territory occupies all of the area where all 4 of these dams that are up for removal are within the Shasta's Aboriginal territory. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And were the Shastas invited to be part of this table and this discussion when folks were making decisions whether to rip out your dams or not?
No, we were not invited. Parties that did not agree were not invited, so they did that to, you know, get along.
Well, thank you for being here as our special guest for this article. We'll come back to you here in a few moments and have a few more comments and thoughts. It's not every day we get Roy Hall Jr. here in the house, in the studio, and I'm tickled that he's here, so we'll come back and visit with him a little bit later.